Brian Lovvorn, the husband of Amy Slayton, who stars in the reality show 1,000-Pound Sisters, has cancer and is getting worse. Amy Slayton is having a hard time right now because her husband Brian Lovvorn is in the hospital with terminal cancer. Doctors say his condition is critical and he may never be able to live a normal life again. Amy has been there for Brian through thick and thin throughout this hard time. No other family members have come to see him in the hospital yet, which has made Amy even more upset and worried. Amy is heartbroken over the unclear future of her loved one and the fact that she is alone right now. But she is strong enough to deal with it without breaking down. This is a beautiful example of unselfish love and compassion. The hospital's sterile walls were colder than ever. Amy Slayton sat quietly in the corner of room 209, her eyes fixed on the thin figure lying in the bed, Brian Lovvorn, her husband, the man who used to make her laugh even on her worst days. Now, he barely mumbled her name. 2 months earlier, Brian was told he had late-stage cancer. The news hit Amy like a truck. She remembered that day well. Brian had just said, "Amy, we need to talk," and tears were already forming in his eyes. After that, everything became blurry. Since then, everything had changed. Life, which used to be full of busy filming schedules, family meals, and fights among siblings, was now just 4 bags, beeping monitors, and prayers shouted through sleepless nights. Amy wouldn't leave Brian's side. She brought his favorite blanket from home and played his favorite country songs on her phone, hoping the music would reach him. She even tried to smile past the nurses, thinking that maybe her strength could somehow become his. But maybe the hardest part wasn't Brian's pain. It was the silence from the rest of the family. Tammy hadn't come over once. Amanda sent a text. Misty called once and said she was too overwhelmed to come. The loneliness cut deeper than Amy thought it would. They had always fought, cried, and made up together. Now, it felt like she was drowning alone. One very stormy night, Amy lost it. The rain hit the glass hard, just like the chaos inside her. Brian was asleep and breathing shallowly, and the doctors said he might not make it through the week. Amy crouched next to his bed and held his chilly hand. "I'm scared, Bree," she said, tears flowing down her face. "But I'll be here every second. I promise." Amy turned her sadness into action. She got followers to talk about their tale online, not to get pity, but to raise awareness. She made a short video called Love and Sickness, Our Journey, to share their story. It spread like wildfire. People from all across the world sent messages of hope and support. People who didn't know each other became family. Brian got flowers, cards, and even quilts that people sewed by hand. The hospital room was no longer a jail. It was a place of love and comfort. And little by little, Brian became better. He wasn't better. The cancer was still there. But he began to open his eyes. He laughed at Amy's jokes again. He even said, "I ain't done bothering you yet, babe." The doctors said it was a miracle. Amy said it was love. Tammy's family finally came around. One afternoon, she showed up with a bag of Brian's favorite snacks and tears in her eyes. She grabbed Amy hard and said, "You're stronger than all of us." Brian was released months later. He was still getting treatment, but he was stable. Amy pushed him out of the hospital in a wheelchair, and the sun was shining on their cheeks. Outside, reporters were waiting with their cameras flashing. Someone questioned, "Amy, how did you keep going?" She smiled despite her tiredness and said, "You don't wait for hope when you love someone deeply. You turn to hope." She rolled Brian toward the car, home, and a future that was uncertain, but one they would face together. But Tammy Slayton had reached a turning point in her life after years of suffering with her weight and going through a lot of emotional problems. After her successful weight reduction operation, she was starting to lose weight, but there was still a problem with extra skin that hung over her future. Amy and Tammy sat on the porch of Amy's house in Dixon, Kentucky, one night. The trees moved in the late summer breeze, and the air was thick with unspoken thoughts. Tammy, who was unusually silent, glanced down at her hands and moaned. She finally added, "I know I should be happy, but I'm scared, Amy. Afraid of what will happen next." Amy looked at her sister with worry written all over her face. Tam, what are you afraid of? Tammy thought for a moment.
The skin.
This skin is all loose after dropping so much weight. What if I have the operation and I just go back to doing things the way I used to? What if I mess up everything I've worked for? Amy didn't say anything immediately away. Instead, she stretched out and took Tammy's hand. You've gone too far to turn back now. But I understand. That following step is daunting. You've always turned to food for comfort. But we need to get you a new way to feel better. That night, the two sisters watched old videos of when they were kids, before they became addicted to food and were just silly, happy kids. Tammy's eyes filled with tears. At some point, she had lost that happy girl. The next day, Tammy did something surprising. She asked to see a therapist. Tammy talked openly about her anxieties of going back to binge eating, her anxiety about how she looked, and her deep guilt while Amy was there. I always turned to food when I felt empty, she said in one session. But now I want to deal with that emptiness. The turning point happened when they talked to a plastic surgeon. Dr. Hargrove, a well-known expert, explained to Tammy what skin removal surgery was really like, including the risks, the recuperation time, and the changes she would have to make to her lifestyle thereafter. The doctor remarked sweetly but firmly, Tammy, this surgery is not just for looks. It works. It's about your health, your comfort, and your ability to move. But you have to be ready in your mind and heart. You have to promise to never go back. Tammy felt like lightning hit her when she heard those words. Tammy stood in front of the bathroom mirror that night and lifted her shirt to see how her figure was changing. Stretch marks and loose skin showed the scars of her history, yet she could see the beginnings of power behind it all. Tammy started a stricter routine right after that. She stopped getting takeout late at night, started making meals with Amy, and started jogging with her sister every morning. When she wanted to binge, she either called her therapist or wrote down her thoughts in a journal. She even made a YouTube series to keep track of her mental health and shared her problems so that other people could hold her accountable. It wasn't simple. She screamed at night because she wanted something, days when her body hurt. But over time, her deadly eating habit, which had been her lifetime monster, began to lose its hold. The big day finally came after months. Tammy got the go-ahead for surgery to remove skin. She said, "I'm not scared anymore," as she lay on the hospital bed holding Amy's hand. "I'm prepared." And she was. After her surgery, Tammy moved about better, breathed easier, and smiled more. Her relationship with food had changed. It wasn't ideal, but it was better. And for the first time as an adult, Tammy Slayton wasn't living. She was alive. It all began with a talk on the porch, a sister's love, and the bravery to look in the mirror and declare, "I deserve better." But Amy's residence in Dixon, Kentucky, was meant to be a quiet place on Sunday. The kids were playing in the backyard, birds were singing in the summer light, and Amy had just finished making her renowned mac and cheese for a modest family meal. The Slayton sisters, on the other hand, didn't often have tranquility for long. Tammy had been staying with Amy for a short while after a recent scare with her oxygen levels. Amy had welcomed her sister into her house with kindness, but the tension between them had been building for days. Little fights over dirty clothes, TV time, and fridge space had started to build up like hidden landmines. And today, one of them blew up. Amy's voice was a mix of anger and disbelief as she screamed from the kitchen, "Tammy, did you eat the last of my keto brownies again?" Tammy, who was lying down in the living room, rolled her eyes. "I thought you made them for both of us. I didn't know we had to sign up." Amy burst into the room.
"No, girl.
"I made those so I wouldn't eat too much junk food. You know I'm trying to lose the baby weight." Tammy huffed. "Here we go again. You act like you're the only one with problems. What about me? I've been fighting for every breath I take, and you're crying over brownies?" That was all. Years of anger, remorse, sacrifice, and pain that had never been addressed came to the surface. Amy snapped. "You always make everything about you. I've been taking care of you since we were kids. Tammy, I gave up so much for you." Tammy's eyes got bigger, and her voice got louder. "You think I asked for that? You think I wanted to be sick? I never told you to give up anything. But maybe if you paid more attention to your own life and less to mine, you wouldn't be so miserable." They were yelling now, and the neighbors could hear them. Michael, Amy's husband, came in to attempt to settle things down, but both sisters were too far gone. "You want to talk about miserable? Try carrying everyone's problems and never getting a thank you," Amy yelled, tears in her eyes. Tammy got up, even though it was hard. "Maybe I'll just leave then. Maybe you'd be happier if I just went away again." There was a quiet. Amy looked at her in disbelief. "Maybe you should," she said quietly. Tammy packed a little bag while her hands shook. Gage, Amy's son, came out from behind the hallway. He looked confused by the loud sounds. Tammy leaned down, kissed him on the forehead, and left without saying anything further. Amy fell onto the couch and cried. She didn't want things to go that far, but it had. And now her sister, who was also her best friend, was gone again. It was 2 days. The house was really peaceful. Amy missed Tammy, even her snarky comments and stubbornness. Tammy, who was staying with a cousin nearby, couldn't stop thinking about what Amy had said. Then, late at night, Amy's phone rang. It was a message. "Tammy, I miss Gage. I also miss you.
Can we talk?"
Amy answered right away. "Amy, I miss you too. Come home and let's fix this." Sisters can quarrel like crazy, but nothing can break the strong tie they have created over a lifetime of love, sorrow, and hard work. But there was no end to the ups and downs in Season 4 of 1,000-Pound Sisters. But even with all the ups and downs, disputes and disappointments, tears and changes, the best parts were the funny, touching, and unforgettable moments between Tammy and Amy. Let's go over the top 5 made-up moments that fans would never forget if they were true. Tammy was just starting to feel better after a long recovery, and Amy came to see her at the rehab center. Amy unexpectedly challenged Tammy to a wheelchair race down the corridor as they were talking. As they sped by in squeaking wheelchairs, nurses and staff cheered them on. They laughed so hard that they couldn't finish the race. Tammy bumped into a supply wagon by mistake, which sent bandages flying. She didn't get mad. Instead, she started laughing uncontrollably, and so did Amy. Tammy hadn't really laughed in a long time. That ridiculous little race made them remember how amazing it felt to be sisters again. Amy asked Tammy over for a healthy sisters cookout since she was determined to eat clean. The goal? Chicken grilled, broccoli steamed, and sweet potato mash. Doesn't sound too hard, does it? Not true. Tammy put cinnamon in the chicken rub by mistake instead of paprika. Amy tried to mash the sweet potatoes, but dumped them on the floor. The smoke detector went off because the broccoli steamed so much. Gage began to cry. Glenn's diaper was full with excrement. There was a lot of noise, but it was the kind that makes you giggle. They ordered grilled chicken from a diner nearby and watched a movie while making fun of their chef life. It was dirty, but it was true. It was family. Tammy did something totally out of the blue for Amy's 36th birthday. She prepared a surprise party. She planned a backyard barbecue with Chris and Misty's aid, and she even prepared, watched someone else bake a low-carb chocolate cake. Amy cried when she came into the backyard and saw the decorations, the candles, the images from her childhood, and Tammy's beautiful smile. Amy muttered, "I thought you forgot." Tammy murmured softly, "I'll never forget my sister." It was one of the most beautiful and moving parts of Season 4. People couldn't stop talking about it online. Tammy even cried when she watched the episode again. Amy and Tammy decided to bring back their crazy and funny TikTok dances after fans begged them for months. They wore matching neon clothes and danced to a popular version of Destiny's Child's Bootylicious. Tammy's increased vigor and mobility stunned her fans. They messed up their steps, laughed so hard they had to stop, and even brought Chris in for a cameo at the end. The video went viral and got more than 5 million views in 2 days. Fans called it the comeback of the year. But the sisters didn't care about views. It was time to laugh again, dancing again, being them again. One of the strongest scenes was not intended at all. The cameras caught Tammy and Amy talking on the porch late at night. The moon was high, the air was still, and the two sisters talked about their worries about being parents, their health, getting older, and losing each other. Tammy said that sometimes she pushed Amy away because she was afraid of being a burden. Amy took her hand and murmured, "You will never be too much for me. You're my sister, my best pal."
For the rest of my life.
Tammy cried without saying a word, and for the first time, she didn't draw away. That moment was real, unplanned magic that reminded everyone why they fell in love with these two in the first place. But on a beautiful afternoon in Kentucky, Amy Slayton and her brother Chris Combs sat on the front porch and drank sweet tea while talking about old times. Things had been calm lately. Tammy was getting well, the kids were growing up quickly, and their family was finally starting to feel entire again. Amanda pulled up in her old truck at that moment, and her face seemed quite serious. She didn't slam the door like she usually did. She didn't yell her famous, "Y'all better be ready for this heat." Instead, she gently went toward them, carrying her phone in one hand and a manila packet in the other. Amy and Chris understood right away that something was awry. "Amanda? What's happening?" Amy asked as she stood up. Amanda's voice broke. "I need you all to sit down. It's not simple for me to say this." Chris chuckled in an effort to lighten the situation. "Girl, I swear if you say you're moving to Florida." "No, it's worse," Amanda said, her voice cracking. "I went to the doctor last week for a checkup. They discovered something. I have cancer in my cervix." Amy let go of her glass. It broke on the wooden porch, yet no one even blinked. Chris stood still. His silly smirk turned into shock. Amanda went on, her eyes full of tears. "It's stage 2. They got it, but I need to start therapy right away. I didn't want to tell you until I was sure.
But now.
I need you." Amy started to cry. No, not you too. "Mandy, we've been through too much. You can't do this by yourself." Chris immediately wiped his eyes. "You won't have to go through this alone. We're going to combat it. Everyone. Do you hear me?" Amanda nodded, even though it hurt. "I'm afraid. But I knew I wouldn't have to if I told you to." The days that came after were hard. Amy had a hard time sleeping at night because she couldn't stop thinking about what would happen if Amanda had to have surgery or worse. She had already lost a lot of things from her prior life, like her weight, her marriage, and her sense of stability. Amanda had been her anchor, her strong big sister who never gave up. Chris tried to be strong for everyone, even making jokes during Amanda's first round of chemotherapy. But Amy knew her brother too well. Every night, she would hear him cry softly outdoors, not wanting anybody to notice how sad he was. The whole family came together when the season changed, and Amanda started her treatments. Tammy surprised everyone by really stepping up. She drove Amanda to her appointments, helped her with meals, and even made her laugh with her snarky jokes. Amanda gazed up at her siblings and smiled softly one day after a really hard treatment. "Y'all might be a disaster, but you're my mess. I couldn't ask for anything better." Amanda's scans came back 6 months later. Amy and Chris hugged her tightly, as if they never wanted to let go. The news had crushed them, and the terror had broken them, but in the end, they had each other. And that was what made the Slayton family strong. They bend, break, and fall apart, but they always get back together. But Amy and Tammy Slayton felt it was time to hire a full-time home care nurse after their recent health problems and hospital admissions. Gage was developing quickly, and Tammy was trying to keep her freedom and mobility. They both realized they needed help, but they couldn't agree on who to employ. Amy had been trying to be a good mother, heal from her illness, and be there for Tammy emotionally all at the same time. Now she lived in a cozy home with Gage and their baby Glenn. She had done her homework, even produced a color-coded binder of nurse prospects, and had already chosen her choice. "I'm telling you, Nurse Kelly is the best. She has worked with people after surgery is nice," and Gage quickly liked her. "Please," Amy said, waving the binder in the air. Tammy, who was sitting in her recliner with her arms folded, laughed. "Sweet doesn't cut it. I need a strong person. Someone who will tell me if I try to sneak junk food in the middle of the night. That's why I like Danielle the nurse. She doesn't fool around." Amy rolled her eyes. Tammy, this isn't boot camp. We need someone that will work with everyone in the family, not a drill sergeant. You're not the only one who lives here, Amy, Tammy shot back. Just because you had surgery first doesn't mean you get to make the final decision. Things got tense in the Slayton residence. Gage could even feel it. He held onto Amy's leg as the noises got louder. One afternoon, their boss Amanda came by and saw the sisters sitting quietly, with their backs to each other. What happened now? Amanda inquired. Amy let out a sigh. We're fighting over nurses like it's the last rose on The Bachelor. Amanda laughed, but she knew it was serious. Hey, you guys need help. But maybe the answer isn't to choose one person. Why not try both for a week and see which one works better? Tammy lifted an eyebrow. Like a nurse fight? Exactly, Amanda said with a smile. Let both of them come. You will each have a chance to speak, and you might even learn something from the other person's choice. Both sisters consented, but not without some hesitation. First came Nurse Kelly. She was kind and patient, and she even brought Gage sticker books. She helped Amy with little chores and gently pushed Tammy to do small workouts while being supportive. Tammy, on the other hand, said, "She's too soft. She lets me do too much." Nurse Danielle came next. She was strict, always on time, and didn't accept excuses. On the first day, she took Tammy's secret cache of cheese puffs and told Amy to take a 10-minute break. You're not a superwoman, Amy. Danielle had said, you need to rest too. Later, Amy told Gage in a whisper, she scares me a little. The sisters and Amanda sat down together at the end of 2 weeks to make a final choice. Well, why? Amanda asked. Tammy gazed at Amy. Look, I still think Danielle is great, but Kelly made me feel protected. She didn't make me do it. She paid attention. I might have needed that more than I realized. Amy nodded. And Danielle told me to take care of myself and not just everyone else. We might have both been stubborn. That night, they made an unusual choice to hire both nurses on different days. Danielle would come in for the harder treatment days, and Kelly would take care of the easier, family-focused ones. It wasn't the best option, but it worked. They finally found balance in their care and in their sisterhood. But for weeks, Amy and Chris had been arranging a special event where people could meet and greet them. People from all over were delighted to see them, especially Amy's sister Tammy, who was liked by many. But there was one significant problem. Tammy wasn't sure she wanted to go. Amy understood how much this event meant to Chris and their followers. Chris had worked hard behind the scenes to make sure everything went smoothly. Tammy had always had Roger's trouble leaving her comfort zone. The idea of being in a crowded location with cameras and strangers made her feel like she was going to lose it. Amy and Chris sat down with Tammy in the living room on a bright morning, intending to talk her into it. Amy added softly, Tammy, this meet and greet means a lot to a lot of people. They care about you and want to help you. It won't be long, only a few hours. Tammy turned her head away and chewed her lip in worry. I don't know, Amy. It's frightening. What if I get sleepy? What if I don't feel good there? What if people look? Chris nodded in agreement. We understand, Tammy. It's not easy. But we'll be there for you every step of the way. We'll stop when you need us to. We can even go to a quiet place if things get too much. Tammy still wasn't sure, though. She had so many health problems that the idea of going outside felt like a mountain. Amy stretched out and took Tammy's hand. Think about how far you've come. You're stronger than you know. And this is a time for everyone to cheer you on and celebrate you. Amy and Chris began getting things ready for Tammy to make her feel better that afternoon. They set up a comfy chair, snacks, water, and a quiet area specifically for her. They asked a few close friends to come over and help. It was time for the meet and greet, and Amy and Chris drove to get Tammy. Tammy was still frightened when they got to her house, but she smiled a little. Are you ready? Please, Amy said softly. Tammy nodded and held on to her small bag. When Amy and Chris showed up at the venue, the spectators cheered loudly. When Tammy came out, the crowd cheered, sent her warm greetings, and smiled. Tammy's eyes were full with tears. During the race, Amy and Chris stayed close to each other, cheering her on and telling her to take pauses. Chris would sit next to Tammy and tell her stories and make her laugh every time she was tired or frightened. Tammy was really proud with herself by the conclusion of the day. With the help of the people who loved her most, she had faced her worries. Tammy said to Amy and Chris on the way home, "Thank you both. I didn't think I could do it, but I did with you." Amy grinned and gave her sister a big hug. "We're always a team." Chris smiled. "Next time we'll do it again and make it even bigger." And with that, their friendship became stronger, showing everyone that often the hardest things are the most beautiful achievements when you work together. But fans of 1,000-Pound Sisters were promised more emotional adventures, unexpected turns, and the strong friendship between Amy and Tammy in Season 5. But what truly transpired off-camera was a story of sisterhood, suffering, and progress that had never been told before. Amy was determined to make this season different when filming started. She had been through a lot with her weight and health over the years, and she set new goals for herself. She wanted to not only lose weight, but also have a better connection with herself. Tammy, her protective and occasionally headstrong sister, was with her, but things were quickly getting tense. Amy was dealing with more than just her physical problems behind the scenes. She was fighting sentiments of uncertainty and anxiety that the cameras couldn't always see. Amy cried one day after a really hard workout. She told the film crew about her anxieties of failing again and how the pressure to succeed was too much for her, Tammy, and the millions of people watching. Tammy, who often played the role of Amy's support on television, was going through her own problems. She was having a hard time with feelings of anger when the camera wasn't on. She wanted Amy to work harder, but she didn't want to seem mean or unsupportive. When the cameras weren't rolling, this internal tension led to a lot of fights between the sisters. After a fight regarding Amy's eating habits, the two sisters got down for a serious talk one night. Tammy told Amy that she was afraid of losing her and what could happen if Amy didn't take care of herself. Amy then talked about how those worries often made her feel like people were judging her instead of helping her. The production team set up a group therapy session, and it was one of the most powerful moments behind the scenes. Amy and Tammy talked about years of grief, regrets, and hopes with their parents and a few close friends. Both sisters changed after the session. Amy understood that her quest wasn't only about reducing weight, it was also about healing emotional wounds. Tammy knew that sometimes being there for Amy meant stepping back and letting her discover her own power. During the production of Season 5, the sisters had to deal with a lot of problems, such injuries, emotional breakdowns, and times when they weren't sure they could do it. But the cast and crew saw how strong they were and how well they worked together behind the scenes. Amy and Tammy were there for each other, made each other laugh, wiped away each other's tears, and celebrated every little win, even when the cameras weren't rolling. The day of filming the season finale was full with different feelings. Amy had just reached an important point in her health journey when Tammy surprised her with a beautiful letter telling her how proud and loved she was. When the crew was done, both sisters praised them for telling their tale honestly, showing not only the glamorous parts but also the dirty, real parts. There was more to Season 5 of 1,000-Pound Sisters than merely losing weight. It was about two sisters learning how to deal with sorrow, love, and change together, both on and off camera. And there was a narrative of bravery behind each episode that the audience didn't see very often but felt very intensely. But Tammy Slayton had just concluded her recovery program on a sunny spring afternoon in Dixon, Kentucky. She wheeled herself out of the facility gates with a sparkle in her eyes and a new feeling of purpose. The world outside suddenly seemed full of possibilities. Tammy had come a long way, both physically and emotionally. She had dropped weight, developed confidence, and was finally ready to welcome love back into her life. Amy laughed as she helped her into the van. "Girl, you better be careful out there. Men are going to fall at your feet now." Tammy laughed. "Let them fall. I won't pick anyone up unless he can lift me too." The sisters sat down in the living room when they got home. Gage was crawling around on the floor, and Glenn was laughing in Amy's lap. Chris brought over a tray of iced tea, and the family spoke about all the things Tammy had missed. But her thoughts were elsewhere. "I think I'm ready to date again," she finally remarked. No sound. Amy blinked. Really? Yeah. I know I did something wrong before, but I'm not the same person I used to be. I want someone to see me, not simply my weight or my story. Chris rubbed his beard. Okay, but promise us that if you see any red flags, you'll run away this time. Tammy nodded. Okay. Tammy downloaded a dating app, which she promised herself she would never do again. She created a fresh profile, chose a picture of herself beaming after graduating from rehab, and said, sassy, strong, and looking for a real connection. Let's discuss if you're nice and honest. Her inbox was full within a day. Most of the texts she got were too flirty, too phony, or just plain strange. But one stood out. Marcus was his name. He was from Nashville, worked at a vet's office, and seemed like a really amusing guy. They began to talk. Day went into night, and before long they were FaceTiming every night. He didn't care about what had happened to her in the past. He paid attention when she told him about her problems, surgeries, and scars. That night, he informed her, "You're brave. Most people would have quit, but you didn't."
That speaks a lot about you.
Tammy turned red. No man had ever talked to her like that before. Marcus drove to Kentucky to see Tammy in person after talking to her for a month. It was like a movie premiere when the complete Slayton family came to the house. Amy looked through the blinds. He's kind of cute. Chris made a noise. We'll see if he can handle the family. Marcus was nice, polite, and a little scared. But he gave Gage and Glenn gifts and Tammy flowers. They spent the weekend together talking, cooking, and even going for a walk in the park. Tammy didn't feel like a burden for the first time in years. She knew she was loved, wanted, safe. But not everyone agreed. Some admirers on the internet said bad things about Tammy. She's going too fast. He's using her for fame. Another mistake is about to happen. Tammy read the remarks and felt her heart drop. Marcus saw. Don't let them tell you who you are. You've already won by showing everyone that you're still alive. But uncertainty began to creep in. Tammy cried one night. What if you leave like the others did? Marcus took her hand. Unless you tell me to, I'm not going anywhere. They moved at a sluggish pace. Tammy came to see Marcus in Nashville a lot. They went to counseling as a couple. They made healthful meals together. They learned how to help each other, not just when things were going well, but also when they were hard. Marcus asked her to marry him in front of everyone at a family cookout a year later. He said, I'm not just asking you, Tammy. I'm asking your family as well. Because I want all of this, the love, the chaos, and the Slayton craziness. Tammy started to cry. Amy cried even louder. Chris gave them both Kleenex and added, well, dang, it's about time. Tammy's adventure through dating wasn't great. It was a mess, but it was real and full of lessons. But in the end, she didn't just find love. She found a part of herself that she never knew she could be. Tammy went from being a reality celebrity to becoming an example in real life. She showed that healing and happiness are always possible, especially when you eventually learn to accept yourself.